is day 79 of 365 days of remembering. The sun is shining, all the snow is melted. Today I am feeling very called to let Trina go even more, to let my character step out of the way a bit more so that I can flow more purely with Source, with my inner being, and share from that space some potentialities about the circumstances that we're all facing, what's going on. The date being March 19th, 2020, if that's relevant. And so much talking all over social media about this being a time of awakening, this being a call. And in so many ways, doesn't it seem obvious that it's a call? I mean, literally. As I've said in other videos, being called to spend time at home, being called to quiet down and to have less distractions of the outward focused part, and to come home to yourself, and to also have an awareness of how much each of us wants to step back into those distractions to sort of escape what's going on. And I myself, this is me now still talking as Trina, and then I'm going to get out of the way, but found myself over the last few days feeling a little bit pulled into wanting to make sense of it, like needing to have some way the mind could understand it. I get in so many ways that this is a co-creation. I get that it's serving all of us, and I have many levels of an explanation. But I started to feel this interesting noticing that it seems strange that we've so quickly moved into an idea of putting people ahead of things, in the sense of ahead of money, that literally they're willing to instigate all of these sort of shutdowns and at the same time watch the stock market just fall. My partner is a trader on the stock market, so I have a lot of awareness of that, and that noticing has been interesting to me. And so my other aspect of my mind went to that place of like, so what's really going on here? Because it doesn't seem logical from the way that the collective has been running that it would ever choose to put human life, even as sad as that is, above something like the economy and money. And yet at the same time, isn't that the thing we all want? Isn't that where we're going? So I noticed it in myself, and then I checked it, and I came into this really clear new understanding. And this is where I'm going to step out a bit. And it was partly because Trina, the character, had read some things that helped to activate this. But this idea of how are we looking at anything? So when a circumstance comes outside of us, no matter where it is, over in the periphery, right in our face, it's always a reflection. It's always the reflection of our consciousness, of our vibration, of our what we need to empty more of where we're putting our thoughts, our beliefs, all that kind of stuff. It's this culmination of all of those things, and it serves us to use that reflection to empty ourselves more, to see where we're vibrating, to see what we're actually feeling, not just what we're speaking with our mouth, but what we are actually a vibrational match to. And that's what it serves, and that's how it serves us, not to then be the thing that takes us. I mean, it's going to take us as a bounce, but not to be the thing that we then make our next decision from. So we're not going to take our cue from it. We're going to take our cue to go inward, examine that reflection, and look at it. And so remembering that, then I was feeling into this idea, which I've spoken about before, that every possibility in this infinite creation is equally valid and true. Every single being on this planet, I think it's 7.84, something like that, billion, has the right to choose any story, any perspective, anything that they want. And it is equally invalid and true. Why? Because it's equally invalid true to them, and because it exists. So that therefore makes it true. It is their perception. It is what their lined up experience, alignment, understanding, awakening level, spirituality, whatever you want to call it, sleeping, not sleeping, has brought them to. And it stands as their truth, which then makes it equally valid because there isn't one thing that's more valid than anything else within this infinite expression of Source, of God. Everything is still an expression of God. The only way that Source or God can express infinity is to have infinite expressions, which is what all of us are. Not only infinite expressions as individuals, but infinite expressions within our own individuality as a shard of Source. So from that perspective, that means that everything along the possibility of everything you could ever have heard is equally valid and true. Which means that the fact that it is just this really horrible virus that can make everybody sick and kill a bunch of people and there's something to be afraid of is equally true, all the way through to I choose how I want to feel and everything's working out to me and that soothes me, so I'm going to go there, to wow, it's a time for awakening and it's waking the world up and it's calling everybody to go more inward and stuff is changing, to beings from other planets are helping out and we're really getting some stuff done, and this is a whole shifting from 3D to 5D or whatever you want to call it, all the way to viruses don't even exist. It's all an illusion. Nothing exists. Everything is just my projection. There's no one else even here except me. Everyone I meet, everything I see is just a manifestation of my own consciousness. It's me playing a game with myself. To beyond this whole matrix of creation into the space that contains it, which is awareness, which is just the container of everything, sees nothing as anything. It's still perfect stillness in every moment, to even beyond that. So, and everything in between, every single potentiality along the way, equally valid and true. So how do we then decide what we want to believe? Well, here's a few key components to that. How does it feel when you lean into different beliefs? So along that spectrum, for you individually, as you're seeking what you want to see as truth, what you want to put on your shelf in your book as the story that you want to tell about this, how does that feel? So if you're telling a story that doesn't feel good, that causes you to feel anything on the negative spectrum of emotions, like anything from fear or lack of control or distrust or worry or concern or anxiety, like any of those things, doesn't feel good. So then from everything we know that that means we're not in alignment with our source self. We're not in alignment with our inner being. That's not going to serve us to stand in that place. So we then just incrementally go along those things and fine. And where is our stopping point? Because probably not everyone can imagine that germs don't exist. I mean, as a collective, we've been so taught that they do, and so taught that there's something that we should be concerned about, if nothing else, take precautions. So it's probably would take a lot to stand in that space, or maybe even to live in that space of it's all just an illusion, that too. So where along that spectrum though is your set point, is the place that you can land with this. And one key other component of this is that we don't need to take our cue from other people that are telling their stories. Just because your mom has a certain story, your best friend has a certain story, even the spiritual teacher you've loved up until this minute has a certain story, your best friend has a certain story, your partner has a certain story, your kids have a certain story. That's okay. Their stories can all be equally valid. It does not mean it has to take from you, and you don't have to identify with their stories just because they said them, because they're all plausible. So then the other thing that came is through this interaction with my inner being, was this idea that each of those perspectives are coming from someplace. So it seems obvious that like the fear-based, really like this is a struggle and this is worrisome and I have so much anxiety and I don't know what to do with myself and oh no. It seems like that is clear that you could perceive it and say it's coming from more of a 3D perspective. So it's coming from like, I'm a person having an experience. There's things outside of me that I can't control. I don't know what's going to happen next. Oh my God, I'm scared. What will I ever do? Okay. And then within that 3D, we move to sort of the edge of 3D, where there might be some like, I'm tapping into this idea that I create my own reality. I don't really understand what it is. I don't really get it all that much, but I'm willing to accept a little bit of the responsibility. Though this thing right now that's going on is way, way, way too big. So I can't imagine that I created that. And then we move into sort of a 4D place where we start to really say, okay, so I do see that I'm creating it, and I see that I'm co-creating it with all these other people, or the collective is co-creating it. So what's going on here? And that version that says, is our conspiracy going on? Was this, man-made or manufactured? Is this part of some process to control people? On and on and on, okay? Then we step into more of a 5D view, which starts to say, wait a minute, this is like each of our individuated consciousnesses waking up so that we can as a collective wake up more. And all of those beings within that collective that are already feeling pretty awake are going to assist or hold the space for those others that are awakening, and that they really needed this giant catalyst to call them home so that they could awaken. But they're in it with us too, because in essence, we all came here to this duality-based catalytic filled space so that we could awaken. So that's the 5D. Now, what happens if we went even beyond the 5D? What is the possibility? Again, that's when we start to get into those ideas that it's all an illusion, it's all perfection, it's all my creation. It just really tunes into you. And that ties back into something beautiful, which is that each individual expression on this planet is in aspect a expression of source, expressing infinite whether they know it or not. So each of us is being called. And what is so beautiful about this is it's hard for the human mind to fathom this, but simultaneously, each of us on our own space of our own expansion, right now where we stand on our own path of this expansion to the fullness of who we are, is being called through this catalyst to take us to a new place. Seems crazy to think that that's true, but it is. Every single one of us is being called to something. Something is being revealed through this catalyst that is saying, hey, you need to look at this, you need to surrender more. And it could be as simple as take some more time and spend it with yourself. Have a retreat with yourself. That's what you're being invited to. Tune into whatever it is that is within you. And I'm holding my hand in my heart and I'm holding my hand at my physical body because that might be what is relevant for someone. There might be someone else that is like called to deepen that experience, to deepen into meditation more regularly. Not only that, but to have more awareness of like, where do I sit in terms of jumping into the collective view about things? Am I able to stand and hold steady in my own knowing of who I am and to my source connection? Or do I tend to start to follow that because it's powerful and because everybody's talking about it and because it's kind of exciting in a weird kind of way? Or do I stand in that steadiness? Also, like when I look at it, what's so interesting to me is I'll just share my own experience, the experience of this character, Trina, because I don't have a reference point clearly to everybody else. But what I would share is that I am moving forward in starting a business that's based on sharing ideas just like this and helping people to wake up and come more into themselves and be what I'm calling a spiritually conscious being, you know, where you love spirituality, you really want to understand who you are, you feel it as this pull within yourself, you're drawn to both empowerment and enlightenment, and you're sort of looking for that cross point, that blended point where both of those things are active within you. So you know that the law of attraction works, you know the universe has got your back, you know you're the creator of everything, but you also understand that you're not creating from the point of a person, you're creating from the point of source energy expressing through you. And that part of the journey is being able to let go of those person things so that the purity of what you're creating comes more into alignment, which doesn't mean that it's not still fun, it's not off the charts, it's not blissed out, it's not a blend of all of that, and that it's not an epic, awesome experience. It's just the main focus is not coming from the person, it's coming from more of that blended space. So that's what I'm doing in the world. And as I step into this, I have a history, this person that I am, developed a history of, I have 4 kids. And so every time I wanted to step into something with myself, into this space of like having a bigger career, moving into something else, having a different flow that was my own, something that was really impactful for me, that really had a lot of depth and meaning to it, the kids would have some kind of need over here, and I would feel like I couldn't balance both of those things and that they needed me. And so this thing that I really wanted to pursue would get pushed to the side and I would be with my kids. And so what's so interesting is, 2 weeks ago, less than 2 weeks ago, I made this giant leap into doing this thing. Like, I'm going to do this thing. And I stepped into a course that was more expensive than anything I've ever bought before with the sole intention of like, this is it now. I'm going to do this thing. And what happens? Within less than a week at the time of doing that, they shut the school down. They can't go to school anymore. I have one kid that's 16 that is already with a sort of homeschool program that can do her own thing. But I have a 12-year-old that is just really an extrovert and really likes lots of time and attention and really loves to learn to some degree, but really wants to learn what she wants to learn and needs a lot more direction. And is used to being in an awesome art school that does take her to her own creativity, but is very centered on presence. So that means that she doesn't work all that well independently. And here I am wanting to work independently. And there was this feeling of mismatch. So my call, and I see this whole thing in the world, did the whole world just create this so that I could be called to my newest expansive point, which is that, okay, I can do both. I'm not a limited being. It is not impossible for me to be able to be present with her, to find the joy and the fun and the thrill in helping her to homeschool, have this deeper sense of creation and of beingness with her, call her home to herself more, do all these fun things, and still be able to action the things that I want to action. Those two things completely possible at the same time. That's what I am being called to. So that's what this whole thing out there that seems so far, and not even my creation in some ways, is perfectly attuned for me and helping me to stretch in a different way. There's that. Then on another level, calling me more and more and more and more to surrender to things that I can't control, to things that have seemingly been created outside of me and seem like they could have an effect on me, but to stand in the solidness of the creatorship, of the clarity, of the sourceness, of the rightness of everything. Not because I'm arrogant and I know what's right, but because I'm surrendered in knowing that whatever it is that's right is beautiful and perfect. And I'm not attached to this identity. I'm not attached to my character. I love her. I think she's beautiful. I think she's having and has had an amazing, unbelievable, expansive experience with her feet on this path that could come to an end in a blink of an eye, and that would be beautiful too. And so it's called me to surrender more. Like, what is it that is the thing that we're most afraid of? Losing control, getting sick and not getting better, and losing the end of our character expression here, like our body dying. But we're not our body. We're the thing that's in our body. We're the source energy that's there. And how do we let go and let go and let go so that we can surrender that too? So every one of us could probably be called deeper to that, to worrying about money, to worrying about our children, to worrying about on and on and on, the state of affairs. Every single one of those is an opportunity to surrender. And why surrender? Because it takes the charge off. And it doesn't matter how much work you do on limiting beliefs. If you have an underlining charge that's often seen in an emotion, it will hold you back from what you want. So I see it almost like each of those viewpoints, 3D, 4D, 5D beyond, or person, more spiritual person, more enlightened person, however you want to frame it, each of those requires us to do surrender, to move to an ability to see from a different standpoint and to rest in that standpoint, like to really be able to go in and out of what I want to do, which is to be able to stand fully as a person, feel all the things that are related to being that, but then to zoom out and step in awareness and watch the person so that I can do a character analysis of her and then come back in and help her by soothing her and by seeing what needs to be shifted and fine-tuning that as the deliberate creator that I am, and then going over with my inner being and looking at her from that perspective and coming back out to awareness and coming back into the person and playing somewhere. I want to do all of those things. And to be able to do it means the more empty that I am of the crap, the conditioning, the collective bullshit, nonsense, momentum that I've been packing on top of myself my whole life, the more that I can empty of that, the more that I'm going to be able to do that thing that I said with all those components of blending. So this is also for every one of us that's a spiritually conscious being, the number one call it has to you is let's test and see how well you're doing with this stuff. How well can you maintain your vibration when things don't go your way? It's easy when the odds are stacked in your favor, and there's nothing wrong with that. But when something arises that is different than what you expected, can you stand in that same serene place? Not all the time. I'm not saying you got to get there and never leave. I'm just saying, can you find your way back there? If you deviate a little bit, do you know? And it's a good test to see, where can I work on this more? Where can I work on this more? What can I improve? How can I better this? And the final thing that I want to add is that so many of us as spiritually conscious beings that really want to be of assistance and really want to help. I was leaning into this and felt this fully from my inner being. So many of us are sort of helping each other, and it's beautiful in the sense that prior to this, much of our marketing was, I'm going to pick my ideal client, and my ideal client is a spiritually conscious being who's already on the spiritual path. And that's great. But what is really being called for right now from the collective is that all of us that are in this space of knowing what it means to be a spiritually conscious being, that knows what it means to choose to have a spiritual life, we're being called to figure out how to communicate that to those that are still not quite there yet. They're on the cusp. Maybe they're still sleeping. They don't really know. And they need us to translate our teachings, the things that we have to say and offer, into a way that can be digested by anyone. And so I invite everyone out there that sees themselves as this to start thinking about it. How would you break it down and start talking to it at different levels of experience for people? Like, how would you talk to someone that this is all new and they're just all of a sudden home and bored and they don't really know and they've never really spent much time inward? How would you talk to someone else that's sort of interested and curious about meditation and does yoga and is open, maybe even has, open to some alternative beliefs, but hasn't really dove into the whole spiritual thing? How would you deal with someone that's really caught up in healing and really feels like there's a lot of healing, and that's the thing that's blocking them to really jump full into this being a spiritually conscious being? How about someone that is really interested in eco stuff and is really into the environment and really thinks that that's where everything's about, and we really got to settle some things in the earth, but you can sort of see that that's getting in their way? All of those people that I just mentioned, and everything in between, are being called to more, and they might need some assistance. That's sort of what we've all been prepping for. And so now, how can you attune and be of assistance? And one of the ways is to, as you meditate, to tune into that, to see yourself as shining the light out there and throwing the vibration out there of ease and peace and flow, and that people will get what they need, and that it'll all line up in some magical ways, and then offer out your magic. Like, now is the time. It's time to get out of the shadows, get out of hiding, get out of worrying about what anyone's going to think. If you have a skill that you want to share, just go out there and share it, because that's what the world is asking for. And I'm really feeling into and attuning to the possibility of a bunch of us coming together as a collective and figuring out what we can do with this. How can we support each other? How can we offer more to the world? How can we share in a way? And if you took the money out of it, like if you were able to just stand in that space that money is a part of you because it's a part of the universe and it's all going to work itself out, the money part, then imagine what we would do. And so many people find themselves in a place where they maybe have a job, but they can't go to work, so they have more time at home, and they're being called to step into this. And I encourage and support them. So if you liked anything that I said in this video, please click the like button. If you like the way that I flow, the way that I call forth my inner being and sort of try to get out of the way and let whatever comes out come out, if you found any resonance in this, please subscribe to my channel, hit the bell, and then you'll see when another flow takes me, which is every day, every few days. It just depends on how I'm doing. And I will see you around. Comment. I would love to hear if you're interested in doing something collectively to start helping the energy of all those other beings that are being called to awaken. Please send me a message or a comment below. I look forward to it. Have an amazing, beautiful, wonderful day. Bye.